And you know what's crazy is while we were gone, speaking of like when we started reading comics, when I started was the death of Superman, which turned 20 while we were gone.
Wow.
20 years ago. It's crazy. Like I felt so old when I read that article. Like I was in 4th grade, I remember, and we used to go to this convenience store around the corner that had like a spinny rack of books, and my mom used to go to the store and get something for dinner or whatever, and I'd go with her, and I'd get to pick out like a candy bar or something. Then one day I picked up, I saw on the spinny rack, Superman all busted up and broken because the direct print version didn't have a bag on it.
Oh, no.
There's just like the so I flipped through it and I was like, oh my god, what is this? What happened? So I was like, Mom, I just want this. This is it. Because it was the same price as a candy bar. It was like $1,
Yeah, comics were cheaper then.
And so she got that and that was it. I was hooked. I went every time we went. I got Superman.
Yeah,
That's it. Superman.
I was reading Superman then too because I picked up.
I got so skinny.
I got a lot of the.
No more candy.
I picked up a lot of the death of death at a funeral or something.
Oh yeah, funeral for a friend. Yeah,
funeral for a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I picked up a lot of that stuff.
Yep. And then I just bought everything. I bought the white bag. Well, what happened was I would go to the store with my mom, and then on the weekends I'd go to the flea market with my dad. And then since I started getting them at the store, I was like, all right, well now I know which ones to look for, which ones I like, and I would go to these comic book dealers and then pick up I wanted to see what happened before that. So I'd pick up back issues, and then the ones all around it, like Green Lantern 46, when the return was happening. I was like, Green Lantern 46, and then I'd see the cover, and it was like Reign of the Superman at the top. I was like, oh shit, what happened here? This is some crazy guy. I never heard of Green Lantern before.
What's crazy about this is I had always known Superman because I'd always watched the movies with Christopher Reeve.
Sure, yeah.
And there was the cartoons, like the Max Fleischer stuff,
Mm-hmm.
stuff. That stuff was awesome.
Yeah.
And then when I remember it was in the news, but this was the first time to me comics were had a giant impact in my life. Because Superman made every newspaper that he was dying.
Yeah, and it was on the news.
They
went to Smallville. There's a real town called Smallville in the United States, and they actually have that statue with the eagle in the town. And they went there, and it was crazy. They all had the Superman armband under the black armband. They were all wearing that.
I saw that poster.
Yeah.
The Funeral for a Friend poster.
Where it was all the heroes wearing the armband, right?
Yes.
And Saturday Night Live did a whole skit about Superman's funeral. Remember that?
Oh, man.
It was crazy. And they had the Justice League. I remember reading those issues leading up to that when I bought the Death issue, and then I went back and read all the issues leading up to it. And that Justice League issue was worth a pretty fucking penny at the time, where the Justice League fought Doomsday.
Yeah.
That was really rare. Yeah. And my dad bought it for me because it was my dad's like, all right, well, you want to see what happens next, so here, he bought it for me. I was like, this is crazy. I saw fucking Doomsday slam a car door into, was it Booster Gold's face?
Yeah.
I was it blew my mind. I was in 4th grade. Everything that happened in comics just
wow.
It was a door opened for me. Oh my god, it was crazy.
Yeah, that was the talk in school for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then after that, nobody cared about comics. But
yep.
I remember going, man, that was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That, and then I'll never forget because we used to go to the bowling alley, and there used to be a card dealership in there. A card, baseball cards.
Yeah.
And the guy never sold comics until the Superman, and he had all 4 issues of, the supposed who is Superman.
Yep.
And I remember
the ones you just got. Yeah.
Oh, and I remember going oh my god, which one of these
is the real Superman? Yep.
See, a fun time in my life.
At the convenience store, they never got those covers, so it was just the normal, cover behind thing. Yeah. So I had all those. So I didn't even know about the other covers, and then I saw them at the flea market the next weekend. I was like, oh, it's the same thing. That would be it, because I just cared about the story.
Yeah.
I would roll them back, and read them like that. I didn't treat them nice at all, I'd roll them up in my pocket, and carry them around with me. But the issue where Cyborg Superman turned evil was probably the biggest influence in me becoming a huge comic fan, because I thought he was Superman. I was as soon as they did that issue where they had the DNA tests and Lois Lane was there, and they were he is Superman, it's him. I was well, it's fucking him. All these other guys, I was well, it's not Steel, he's some black dude. Superboy's a clone. Yeah. Eradicator's some Kryptonian guy. I was it's him. It's gotta be him. And then when he turned evil, I was my world was just destroyed.
I will say,
I hated it and loved it at the same time.
I got into this late. You actually got me into this story, but I've recently gone back, picked up some back issues because I like having the actual individual issues of them.
Yeah.
One of my favorite pieces of comic art is still that one Dan Jurgens cover of Cyborg Superman with the flag.
Oh, yeah.
That is just, so I don't know, that image is just so badass.
That poster that came in the middle of the book where all the wires coming out of his arm, there was like the centerfold poster.
Yeah, that shit was so good.
Oh, it was so great. And that's what, made me a lifelong fan. And if whenever there's an issue with Cyborg Superman, I'm there. I read all of his appearances because I love him. And what's crazy is Reign of Superman not only introduced me to Superman, but introduced me to all these characters. Like, I'll always love that Justice League from reading that. I'll always love Hal Jordan just from reading that. It's like these people that I've discovered first almost seem like old friends to me. It's like Hal Jordan appeared in Green Lantern 46 was a Reign of Superman crossover. I had no idea who Green Lantern was when I read that. I was like, oh man. So I become friends with, as I got older, I became friends with a guy who was a gigantic Green Lantern fan.
Yeah.
And he's like, dude, if you just read 46, you have to read what happens in 47, 48, 49, and 50. I was like, well, I never read those before. So I went to our local comic book store and bought 47 through 50, and that was the issue where Hal Jordan goes crazy. He goes absolutely insane. And that's when I fell in love with Hal Jordan. I was like, oh my god, I love this guy. Like, he goes crazy because of what happened in the Reign of Superman.
Yeah.
Because Code City got destroyed.
Well, alright, so what was your first comic book ever?
My first comic book ever was... It was probably that. That's Superman. Yeah, I can't remember anything before that.
See, I don't remember.
And then I started.
Do you remember like the first time you ever went over and grabbed like a comic?
I do. No, I remember that. I remember it was actually, there was a place I used to get my hair cut. There was a local barbershop. Again, they had a spinny rack of comics. And I fell for like one of the oldest marketing things in the world. Ooh, shiny. Because it was,
a chromium cover?
It was the 30th anniversary Iron Man.
Oh, okay.
Which now is in dollar bins everywhere. But
at
the time, it was that. I got that one, and there was another book called The Golden Age. Another DC book.
I have that trade over there.
And
James Robinson?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, that's
great.
Awesome.
Yep.
And those were the first two. And that was it. I never really got into comics until, like, college.
You know what the first comic I remember reading was? I borrowed my friend's WWF comic book where Ultimate Warrior fought The Undertaker. That comic book.
I will say, like, it's funny because I go back and I look at, I have an old box of comics, and I have, like, a RoboCop issue. I have a first couple issues. I had a Ghost Rider that I was really into.
Did any of you guys have, like, Archie?
No. Fuck that. No.
Nope.
I had, like...
I had Warrior.
And,
I had the Ultimate Warrior comic.
My first ever comic book was, I still have it. It's beat to shit. It's an Amazing Spider-Man. It's McFarlane art, and it's got Green Goblin and Hobgoblin on the cover fighting. Mm-hmm. And it's Spider-Man underneath of, like, I think Hobgoblin or one of the Goblins' glider. And I used to always just look at that book because at the time I was like 4 or 5, and I never read the book. I just looked at it.
Mm-hmm.
And
that cover's great.
And yeah, it's so good.
He's like smashing through the. No, that's the issue before. Sorry, where they're smashing through Harry's office.
Yes. And I really enjoyed that, like, because that was my first comic. And then after that, I think it was like a Secret Wars 2.
Right.
So it's like.
Like, I remember when Death of Superman, or Reign of Superman was finally over, they had that chromium Cyborg Superman cover. Mm-hmm. And that thing was just so cool. I was like, man. And then, like, you open the first inside cover and you see, like, the metal embossed foil on the inside. Yeah. I was like, oh my god. And I remember reading that, and then, again, at the flea market, that's how I kind of got into Spider-Man, because the cartoon aired. It was like a perfect, like, combination of things that happened all at once. Like, Superman died, so I read the comic book. Next thing you know, Fox Kids starts showing Spider-Man and X-Men back to back.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there reading comics, and I'm watching, like, them come to life on my TV at the same time. So it's like, man, I want to see what happens with Spider-Man. So I start reading Spider-Man right after that. And I was like, wow. So I got it. I started buying, like, the first appearance of Carnage is probably the first Spider-Man book I remember buying. Like at the flea market. I bought it, a back issue, and then I bought all those, and I bought all the Maximum Carnages, and then I started buying
You know what's funny is I don't really see comic books at flea markets as much, not new stuff.
Not in the way that they used to be.
Yeah, because that's how I really got into it too. Like, I used to buy a lot of my stuff from, like, the the local supermarket on a spinner rack.
Yep.
And
Spinner racks, man, they really did. That's how they got us. You know, it's
and you look, that stuff's gone now. Like,
you don't even see those. No.
After the spinner rack,
I'm gonna get a spinner rack for the office.
It was I would go to like Berlin Mart or Cowtown, and there was always this one guy who was selling like the most current comics.
Yeah, that's how I started buying my books.
The first stuff I started reading, like the first run I started collecting was Fantastic Four. So,
I never got into the runs or anything. Only recently, I thought it was really neat because I've gone through my old comics. I had this one. It was like the original Ghost Rider Rides Again, and it was Return of Johnny Blaze.
Yeah.
And it was just one issue. I loved it, but it was always part 1 of 7. About 3 months ago, there was some big comic. Well, not big, but like little comic show. A bunch of cheap books everywhere. I think it was one of Bill's. And I found 2 through 7 of that old Ghost Rider set. Like, oh man, I have to get it. So I was like, only now I'm actually going back and I'm seeing the old issues I had, and I'm trying to complete these stories now.
You know what's crazy is I always liked the Ghost Rider as a kid because, like,
oh sure, it was awesome looking.
It was badass.
It wasn't a book that I wanted to read like ongoing. It was always something that I thought the character was awesome, and he always appeared in Spider-Man crossovers. So I was like, this guy's badass. And when the movies came out, disappointingly, I was hoping that they would have been more mature, and just more dark. And
they blew it.
That second movie, good God!
Like that's why.
Holy shit, that one's bad.
That's why there's always hope for Superman in my mind, because people always shit on the character, but that book, I mean, there's so much they could do, that they just don't do.
I kind of wish, like, someone on Facebook the other day posted, like, Superman's, like, the most boring character. And I like Superman. I
like him, too.
But, you know, like, he does have every power. And when you read a comic, it's
all about the weaknesses.
Yeah.
That's why Spider-Man's so big, because he's you. You know, you can associate with Spider-Man because he's a normal guy. And those are the most famous. Batman?
Yeah, he's
rich,
he's
but...
rich, too, but he's no superpowers.
Right. You know? People associate themselves with the most normal guy, and that's why no one can associate with the Superman, because he's the most abnormal guy.
Yeah.
You know? But I like him. I think it's everybody else in his world that's the best part of Superman.
Yeah.
You know? And they don't focus on that. It's always Superman versus Lex Luthor, or Superman versus Zod. And then they're doing it again with Superman and Zod.
I mean, I like Superman Returns, but they should have made another Superman movie with Brandon Routh that was Doomsday.
Sure.
They should have just brought in Doomsday.
You know what? People really just want to see a Superman movie where it's balls to the wall action.
They want to see his powers, you know?
Yeah. You don't want to see him just like...
But the problem is they can't do that because there's not as many characters that can match him with powers.
But you know what? Like, throw in a Metallo.
Sure.
Superman Metallo.
It worked in the animated series.
Yeah.
They could do it in the movies. They just got to have Metallo. Parasite, even.
Yeah.
You know? Or Brainiac.
And all those can be easily, like, you just put in a simple concept for the character, you know?
Metallo especially would be the best.
A simple origin.
It's a cyborg with a kryptonite heart. You know? I mean...
It's literally a Man of Steel versus the Man of Steel.
Yeah. It would just work the best. But there's just so many things that they can do that they just don't do. So yeah, so Death of Superman, 20 years. So I've been reading comics for 20 plus years now.
Good.
I feel like an old man. So I was 8. You can say I was 8 years old when I bought my first comic book.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was kind of life changing.